Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2024 TEDx St. Francis High School event. Before we begin for the evening, please join me in giving a warm welcome to Mrs. Katie Teakle and Mr. Jason Curtis, who will lead us in prayer.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of our outstanding principal, Mrs. Katie Teakle, and our entire school community, I want to say welcome to TEDx St. Francis. You made it through, for our live audience, through storms and wind, and as of about an hour ago, power outages all over campus. But the show will go on, so thank you so much for being here. This is a really special night. From the minute the last TEDx ended, throughout the entire year, an incredible team has been preparing for this night. I want to thank Ms. Leslie Shortle and an entire group of student leaders who have done everything to make this event possible tonight. If we can give them a huge round of applause, please. In this event, while a TEDx event is uniquely St. Francis, what I really love about this event are a couple of things. First is this builds on the legacy of storytelling that is so important here at St. Francis. Our first TED Talk event was in 2018, and we actually have people in the audience who were there at that very first evening and continue to be a part of our program today. And it's an important part of the tradition of what we do here at St. Francis. Additionally, every single element from the discussions that you have out in the lobby, every little touch reflects our culture and what we do here as a school community. And I love all of the touches that our students really lead to make sure that everyone who is here or watching on the live stream or watching this later knows what's important about St. Francis. But lastly, and especially to our audience members, this is such an important part of what we do here at St. Francis. Pope Francis talks all the time about a culture of encounter, of meeting people, hearing their story, ministering to them and listening to them. And that's what you're doing here tonight. We hope that you're inspired by our students' stories, and we hope that they start conversations that you have not only on our campus, but as you go out into the world. So thank you so much for being here tonight.
And now we will begin our TEDx event as we do all things in prayer. Let us remember that we are in the holy presence of God. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. Loving and gracious God, we thank you for the opportunity to gather today as a community to celebrate the voices of our students. We are grateful that you have given them the power and the strength to share their stories, and that you have endowed us with the capacity to hear them. We ask that you watch over our speakers and crew members who have worked tirelessly to make this evening possible, and that you give us the capacity to listen deeply and fully to the words we are about to hear. May our experience this evening inspire us to likewise use our voices to bring hope to our world. We ask all of this through Christ our Lord. Amen. Blessed Basil Moreau, pray for us. Saint Andre Bessette, pray for us. Ave Crux, Spes Unica. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Welcome again to our 2024 TEDx St. Francis High School event. Thank you again, Mr. Curtis and Ms. Teakle, for leading our opening prayer. My name is Olivia Vinkier, and I'm here with my fellow seniors and co-directors, Durga Morthy and Rithika Arora. I'm beyond thrilled to share with you the culmination of the last 6 months of hard work. From speaker workshops to lobby decorating to late-night tech rehearsals, we have cherished the opportunity to guide our speakers and put together the moving pieces of this event. We have 8 unique stories and ideas to share with you tonight, following our vision of empowering students to act on their curiosity and use their voices to share their stories. We are proud to present to you the raw authenticity of our generation, not just answering the question of what is your story, but more importantly, what does the world have to learn from you?
Starting as SF Talks way back in 2017, we are proud to continue the legacy of our club that has been officially TEDx recognized for the past 5 years. The X means we are an individual and independently organized event as a small part of the much larger TED platform. Alongside high schools, summits, and conferences worldwide, we are proud to embody the missions and values of TED to foster community, spread ideas, and most importantly, create an impact. This year, we put high priority on innovation and renewed perspectives, and we are so thrilled to present to you our 8 speakers who have been working for months to do just that. All of our speakers tonight are coming from a place of vulnerability and personality, so we urge you to open your minds and hearts to be inspired and authentically engage with their ideas.
Our board is composed entirely of students. Everything you see tonight is a direct result of the hard work and dedication our students have put in to create this special event, along with the help from our wonderful moderator, Mrs. Leslie Shortle. I would also like to recognize Aishni Athrish, who founded SF Talks and TEDx St. Francis High School 7 years ago, creating this community of driven individuals eager to make an impact on the world around them. I would also like to bring attention to our TEDx St. Francis High School logo, created in partnership by alumni Elsa Ying, current board member Tenley Flahaven, and teacher Mr. McAvoy. It represents all the ideas, experiences, and stories that culminate into TEDx St. Francis High School. I would now like to invite our Chief of Staff, Haley Harris, onto stage to share a few quick reminders before the event. Thank you.
Before we continue on with our event tonight, we would like to give a few brief reminders. Please remember that there is no food or drink allowed inside the pack. We will have light refreshments that you can enjoy outside or in the lobby. Exits. If this is your first time here with us in the pack, the main exit, which connects to the lobby, is through the door to your right. We also have 2 emergency exits behind you and to your left. Tonight's event will be structured into 2 blocks, with each one featuring 4 speakers. A more detailed speaker order can be found inside your programs. We will have one short break between our blocks for this evening for you to stretch your legs, have a snack outside, and write notes to our speakers. Also, feel free to check us out on our social media Instagram page at TEDxSaintFrancisHS. I would now like to welcome to the stage speaker mentor Carter Adair to officially introduce our very first speaker of the night.
Hello, everyone. Our first speaker of the night is a passionate storyteller who, for years, has been perfecting his craft of writing. Through his journey of rejection and perseverance in the short story publishing world, he hopes to show you how smart persistence can lead to meaningful growth in your own lives. Without further ado, please welcome sophomore Mason Young.
Dear editors, I understand that out of 100 of the submissions under consideration, 50 are from writers over 30. 30 are from authors of full-length books, and 10 have committed to creative writing as their lifelong devotion. For this, I am honored my work has been selected to be part of your prestigious journal. I accept the terms and payment and thank you immensely for your time. Sincerely, Mason. Now this is the email I wrote to myself last April. At this time, I was a year deep into what became a sort of personal obsession, trying to publish my work in literary journals. Emphasis on trying. At this point, if you couldn't tell from the email, publishing these journals isn't usually what a 15-year-old does with his time. These journals are competitive and often have acceptance rates of under 1%. What the email normally sounds like is this. To Mason, thank you for sending us your story. Unfortunately, we will not be able to use this work for our publication purposes. We wish you the best of luck in placing your story elsewhere. Sincerely, the editors. Point being, impersonal. A quick thank you or we wish you luck, and that's it. That email was from Vestal Review, the longest-running magazine for flash fiction. And the whole process, it seems to me, is like searching for something that can only be found by getting extremely lucky. It's like magic. The way I word it, publishing writing is like finding a unicorn. And I might as well get to searching. So I send them another story and wait another month. Then, on May 30th, rejection. I send them a different story. June 2nd, rejection. August 6th, sent out. August 17th, rejection. September 22nd, sent out. October 22nd, rejection. November 30th, sent out. December 1st, rejection. You get the idea. By now, I received 8 rejections from the same place. And from others, I've probably received a total of 80. And each time a decision email pops up into my inbox, I get excited, then nervous, then I open it up and feel a tinge of disappointment. The question I'm asking myself is, what makes me think I'm different? Let's run the math. Vestal Review has published 63 issues, each with a select 5 to 15 stories each. That gets us to around 600 stories. Now, I'm scrolling through the archive, the massive archive, and I'm searching for any author who's under 18, and I find none. Covering my screen are people who've had the time to earn master's degrees, or receive nominations, or write a book, or 5 books. So I look at their stories, and then I read my own. I come across something I wrote a while ago. It's about 2 brothers who are forced to fight to the death. I reread it, and at first, I like it. Then I come to the last line, and I feel underwhelmed. The line goes, "The 2 brothers leaned against the tree with their eyes closed, one with their arm around the other." I'm resistant to changing the story. And of course I am. We protect what we love. We don't alter it. We choose a direction, and we stick with it. That's what resilience is, isn't it? And in this way, I am a unicorn hunter, shooting in the dark, getting lucky. In my mind, it was about ammunition, not aim. The story, as it is, gets accepted or doesn't. So 50% chance. And as I'm reading and rereading, and submitting and resubmitting, the moment begs the question. Even if I make changes, even if I make bad changes, what can I lose? So my finger begins on the backspace key. I start typing. I start rewriting. This is the moment. When I'm done, the line goes something like this. The sound of the shotgun cocking was heard as only a whisper, and the 2 skeletons leaned against the tree with their eyes closed and counted with him. I submit it like that, and I'm worried that revising my words made them worse, that I somehow diluted them. I'd press submit, and it became a waiting game from here. The question remained, would this time be any different? Let's fast forward a month. It's 6 a.m. in the morning, and it's dark outside. The first thing I do before brushing my teeth or even getting out of bed is open up my email. I can see there's a new message in my inbox, and it starts off with, "Dear Mason." I open it up. There's a short contract attached, and in the body of the email, it says, "Congratulations, Mason. We would love to publish your story in Vestal Review." And what I realized is, unicorns don't exist. The turning point here is that I changed something I was passionate about, and I succeeded. But I didn't change my writing even though I loved it. I changed it because I loved it. This brings me back to something a wise person once said to me. You can care enough about something to defend the way it is, but the secret is to care enough to make it better. Another thing I realized was how much I actually loved writing. There's a certain rush to orienting each word. It's this part which brings me to the keyboard each day. I didn't love writing as a product, but as a process. I started viewing my work as a culmination of my resilience, my evolving ideas, and yes, even my rejections. Once I did this, I opened my mind to a world of new perspectives and new frontiers. Then, I had to learn how to accept feedback not just from myself, but from others. I started having my dad, then my brother, then my friends read my work before I submitted it, which was crucial in publishing later stories. When entering new territories, I'm challenged to overcome my ego and find those who can support me. If we're going with the unicorn analogy, consider this my hunting party. So, how does this apply outside of writing? Because I'm sure most of you aren't thrilled by the idea of spending an hour each day on Google Docs. For any difficult task, not just publishing as a youth writer, both passion and persistence are essential. But more than that, it takes a special openness towards growth. You could be struggling with your current work environment. In that case, caring enough to change would not be putting up with it, but rather talking to your team about coordinating new bonding activities or creating positive community guidelines. In a friendship, it could be letting them know if you're concerned about them and offering to help. As of today, I've received 197 rejections. I'm approaching 200. But more recently, I've been getting more deliberate with my submissions and probably receive rejections with personalized and encouraging feedback about half the time. I've been published in many more journals than I thought I ever could be. Other than Vestal Review, my work has appeared in Quarterly West, X-Ray, UCLA's Westwind, and Flash Fiction magazine. That story I first talked about, it got nominated for an anthology for the best microfiction of the year. So whatever you're doing, do it with a desire to improve. The accomplishments will come later. And what I realize about doing anything is that success is not luck. Success is love. So here is the story. Visualize this with me. You're hunting for unicorns through the forest, and eventually you happen across a cliff face. Now, there's a unicorn on the other side and a bridge in between, one of those old and rickety ones from the movies. Your eyes have to stay on the unicorn, so you remember why you're crossing that bridge in the first place. But you can't just jump across. If you don't take the time to look around you and adjust your next move, you'll miss the step and fall through. My advice, find your bridge and get walking. Thank you.
Thank you, Mason, for your invigorating talk on the ups and downs of publishing a story. Through your talk, we learned how to take rejection in stride and how to turn feedback from others into our own superpower. I'm proud to announce the next speaker of the night, who shed some light into the world of boxing and wrestling. Please welcome speaker Miguel Malikse to the stage.
As a young child, wide-eyed in fascination, watching The Karate Kid in my living room, I didn't know that there would be a scene, the Dragon Well scene, that would not only captivate my imagination, but also become a source of inspiration. In the Dragon Well scene, Dre Parker and Mr. Han traveled to the top of Mount Wudang. There, the Dragon Well was introduced, displayed as this giant fountain with a big yin-yang symbol inscribed in the middle of it. Now, the Dragon Well is what gave Mr. Han his magical kung fu powers, so he made Dre drink out of it. Watching this movie inspired me not only from a moral and philosophical standpoint, but also from my future career aspirations. That day was the day I wanted to become a ninja. Something about the simultaneous elegance and strength of ninjas captivated my young mind. I wanted to run in the shadows, conceal my presence, and surprise attack the enemies. So at the time, I thought about the 4 things I needed to become a ninja: speed, strength, silence, and most importantly, an awesome costume. I already knew I had an amazing costume from that year's Halloween, so all I needed to do was master the other 3. Light work. So naturally, with my competitive spirit in mind, I challenged the 5 fastest boys in my class to a race. And I ended up dead last. To see how strong I was, I gave myself the task of doing 10 pull-ups. Not a single one was done. And to top it all off, my parents were complaining about how loud I was being, how I kept dragging my feet along the pavement, and how I kept rambling on about how cool ninjas were. It's safe to say, at the end of the day, my dreams of ninjahood came to an end. But that was when a new dream began. I became a different type of fighter, a boxer. The journey to being a boxer is no joke. It's one of the hardest things someone can do. My brother, a former boxer and my current coach, taught me how to fight in the living room of our small apartment. He taught me the very first step. Before learning how to punch like Tyson or how to dodge like Muhammad Ali, is to learn how to get punched in the face. Now, no one wants to get punched in the face, risk the shiner, and the broken nose too. But in order to be successful in my newfound passion, I knew I had to train myself to not be afraid. So my brother would throw his punches so that they would stay just out of reach. But my fight or flight kicked in, and needless to say, flight won. I would always flinch with the fear of getting rocked. After a week of trying, I told my brother, and he told me about all the times he wanted to quit. All the times the greatest athletes were on the brink of admitting defeat, but stuck with it. He taught me that boxing is a sport where you have to love getting hit in the face, taking the shiner, and the broken nose too. From there, I learned to welcome the negatives of the sport. Fighting has been a big part of my life since then. Learning how to float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. I got good. I got stronger, faster, and I learned to fight. Maybe I would revisit my ninja dreams, but that requires an expanded skill set. So years later, I picked up the art of wrestling, which would make me both stronger physically and mentally. At a wrestling camp I attended last summer, our coach, Phil, talked about the mind's role in the seemingly very hands-on discipline. He emphasized the symbol of yin-yang. Now, how could a symbol in which I saw in the Dragon Well scene 8 years ago relate to the sport of wrestling? The yin-yang itself is a circle divided into 2 halves, one filled with black, yin, and the other filled with white, yang, each half containing a small circle of the opposite color. He taught me how every aspect of the yin-yang symbolizes something. Number 1, the yin-yang are opposites, yet they are interdependent and connected to each other. One cannot exist without the other, as exemplified by the wholeness of the circle. Number 2, the yin-yang illustrates the concept of balance and harmony, where one force isn't completely overpowering the other, as seen by the equally distributed parts of black and white. And finally, the yin-yang represents the idea, the black and white circles of the yin-yang represents the idea that each force contains the seed of another. I thought to myself, how could this philosophy relate to wrestling? My world changed when my coach taught us that just as the yin-yang are opposites, so are you and your opponent. Sometimes you may hate your opponent because they're preventing you from your goal, which is winning. In my experience with anything involving an opponent, I'm taught to hate my opponent because they're preventing me from my goal, and also that hate will fuel me into triumphing over them. But my coach taught us that you need to love the wrestler, and that you need to love your opponent, because without them, there is no sport of wrestling. He related the balance of yin-yang to offense and defense, where every offensive move has an actionable defensive counter. So how can we relate this philosophy to our own lives? It took me a long time. I mean, why would I even like my opponent, let alone love them? It took me several hours of meditation, reflection, and a couple of reruns of The Karate Kid to even grasp this idea. Let's take this step by step. We can take the first concept, that the yin-yang are opposites, yet they are interdependent and connected with each other. If something unfortunate has happened in our lives, we need to understand that the bad things life throws at us is what gives us a challenge. It's what gives us meaning to our lives. Without challenges and hardships, life would be dull and monotonous. Our concept of good and evil would never be fulfilled without pain and suffering. Our appreciation of the good things in life is reliant on the way we approach evil. If we choose to reject it and ignore it, then our concept of good would never be fulfilled. On the other hand, if we choose to open it in wide, welcoming arms, then our concept of good and life as well will be fulfilled. We need to add the flavor of chaos into our lives and develop that acquired taste for it. We can take the second concept, that the yin-yang illustrates the concept of balance and harmony, where one force isn't completely overpowering the other. We can apply this to our mental state in lives as we approach life-changing events. I might be dead focused on, we always think that everything needs to go perfectly. I might be dead focused on acing my test and expecting nothing less than 100. Or I might be focused on pinning my opponent in the very first period. Relating our mindsets back to the yin-yang, one force cannot completely dominate the other without ruining the bigger whole. Let's take a step back and visualize our lives as this yin-yang symbol. If we had our lives full of joy, growth, and prosperity, then we wouldn't have a yin-yang symbol at all. On the other hand, if we had our lives filled with chaos, then our entire yin-yang circle would be black. We need to add just the right amount of chaos into our lives, and it'll add that whole new dimension of flavor and humanity. I get it. Everyone wants to get a perfect score on a test. Was it really worth all the stress and hours of sleep lost? A wrestling match that can turn to complete domination from one side, to a nail-biter where both teams are cheering as loud as possible. Just the right amount of chaos needs to be added into our lives. Having too much chaos in our lives will eventually break us down. Learning how to find the good in the bad and bad in the good allows us to become a more beautiful whole, a symbol of complete harmony. As I've learned throughout my life, the yin-yang can teach us profound lessons about life, balance, and the indomitable spirit within us. Thank you.
Thank you, Miguel, for teaching us on how we can achieve a balance between the chaos and peace in life. Next up, Grace Coyle on how we can treat ourselves with a little bit of kindness amidst life's uncontrollable ups and downs.
Now, I'm no Michael Phelps or Katie Ledecky, but I like to think that I'm a decent swimmer. At least, I passed all my classes and safety tests as a kid. And thanks to all those swimming lessons, one hobby that I now really enjoy is surfing. I love to surf. There's nothing like the feeling of catching a wave and gliding into shore. I honestly feel like I'm on top of the world. That is until the wipeouts. You may know the feeling. Whether you see it coming or not, salt water burns up your nose and you're buried under what feels like tons of water, not knowing which end is up. You're tossed and tumbled around just trying to find the surface. And sometimes, after a really bad wipeout, I asked myself the question, am I a bad surfer? Well, what I've learned is that it's not necessarily about the skill of the surfer, but rather the size of the wave. And this applies in life, too. I got hammered by my first huge wave in the 4th grade, when I came to a massive realization. My little brother had cancer, and I had been completely oblivious the entire time. A year prior, my parents had informed me that Luke would be having some hospital visits for a tumor found in his posterior fossa, or the back left portion of his brain. And being the naive 4th grader I was at the time, I didn't think anything of it. The doctors were just going to make sure that Luke was okay. It was as simple as that. But it wasn't until a year later, as I sat in his final round of chemotherapy, and I overheard a nurse congratulate him on beating cancer, that I put the two together. Cancer. My little brother had just beaten cancer. I had no idea. From that moment on, my world flipped. This was no longer a minute tumor that the doctors could instantly fix, but instead, an atrocious disease that threatened my little brother's safety. Even though he was already okay by the time that I had figured this out, the word cancer still became the source of so much anxiety in my life. I began to feel and convince myself that my brother's cancer was my fault and that I had no control over what was happening. I was being tossed and turned and drowned by a wave of self-doubt and guilt. Now, at the time, I didn't understand how much I was beating myself up with the idea that I had completely missed my brother's diagnosis. As I look back now, I was 9, and my parents never used the word cancer in front of my siblings and I because they were being loving and thoughtful and trying to protect them, their little kids, from the harsh reality that comes with cancer. Around that same time, I began to find a struggle on the basketball court. Up until this point, basketball had always been a source of comfort in my life, a place where I could just forget about all my troubles and play. Until I began to follow every missed shot or turnover with a damaging comment toward myself. I didn't want to miss any more big details or make any more mistakes in my life. So instead, I decided to hyperfixate on every single one. I turned a space that was once my safe haven into a pit of negativity. Around the same time, and as I began to I also began to find struggles in other parts of my life, and these habits began to occur in other aspects. I would beat myself up over a missed point in an assignment, overthink every social interaction, and apologize in situations that had no need for an apology. All of my imperfections became an opportunity for self-deprecation, and everything I did felt like a disappointment. Now, I know I'm not the only one that thinks this way. As humans, we have a tendency to lack a balance, the balance of holding ourselves accountable and being too hard on ourselves. Or in other words, determining what waves to learn from and what waves to just let go of. Even the most successful of people encounter waves of imperfection. Take Steph Curry for an example. Steph Curry is easily the best three-point shooter of all time. But get this, the best three-point shooter of all time only makes 47.5% of his shots. Let me say that again. The best three-point shooter of all time only makes 47.5% of his shots. That's not even half. And that makes failure seem inevitable, not just in basketball, but in life. We can't shoot anywhere near 100% all the time. We can't be anywhere near perfect 100% of the time. So when we're imperfect and when we make mistakes, why do we react the way that we do, beating ourselves up and expecting that 100%? Well, psychologists actually have an explanation for this, and it's called negativity bias. Negativity bias is essentially our natural human tendency to dwell on negative thoughts and emotions rather than the positive ones. For example, if you miss one shot, but then make the next, your brain will naturally begin to fixate on the one that you missed rather than acknowledging the one that you made. This reaction occurs in the part of our brain called the amygdala, which is responsible for our emotions and motivations. Essentially, 2/3 of the neurons in this portion of the brain are prone to triggering and recognizing negative emotions before realizing the positive ones. So, in a way, our brains are naturally built to start resenting ourselves before recognizing the whole picture. And negativity bias isn't something that's just popped into our heads magically, but it actually stems back to early human evolution. Scientists have developed the concave fitness state hypothesis, which suggests that negativity bias is linked to early humans. Ever since humans have begun to walk the earth, we've made mistakes and adapted to them. That being said, negativity bias was a crucial part of this adaptation. It was a way to protect ourselves from repeating the same fatal mistakes that would keep endangering us. Similarly, in the present day, we also use negativity bias as a protection, but in a much more toxic way. We no longer use it as a survival method, but instead a way to protect ourselves from our own realities, or the big, scary, unsurfable waves in our lives. As we evolved, we began to have less of a need for negativity bias, but it still stuck with us and became excessive. And instead of using it in a way to learn from our mistakes, we began to use it in an abusive way toward ourselves, which is exactly what I did when I blamed myself for my brother's diagnosis. Now, recognizing that negativity bias is a natural human tendency, how do we overcome a bad habit that is literally hardwired into our brains? Well, in short, we can't necessarily get rid of it completely. Similar to the early humans, we still need to hold ourselves accountable in situations that require responsibility. But in the situations that we have no control over, we need to learn how to contain that negativity. And this is no easy task. It takes will, intentionality, and discipline. And even with that, we still can't be 100% all the time. But experts have developed these 3 tools to help us. First, recognizing and analyzing where negativity bias comes from. By realizing where our negativity stems from, we can create a starting point for growth. Second, cultivating habits of gratitude and mindfulness. By recognizing the good in ourselves and the good in other people, we create a space in our minds for more positivity. Finally, by practicing exercises like breathing practices or meditation, is scientifically proven to help counteract negativity bias. So let's recap. We have no control over what happens in our lives, but what we can control is the way that we respond to them. That's why it's so important to try and grow. Because sometimes we mess up and wipe out, but sometimes we ride the perfect wave into the shore. Sometimes we miss an easy shot, but sometimes we drain the game-winning 3. Sometimes we have control over the things that happen to us, but most times we don't. So next time you catch yourself leaning toward a negativity bias, remind yourself to go a little easier, because sometimes you just need to give yourself a little bit of grace. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace, for inspiring us to love ourselves even through times of uncertainty. Up next to talk to us about harnessing one's talents to unleash our truest selves is Valerie Wong.
This is Leonardo da Vinci. He was a painter, sculptor, scientist, artist extraordinaire, you name it. But I doubt anyone needs me to recognize his name. Da Vinci is a household name for more than just any achievement in one field. It's his contributions to science, engineering, and art that have cemented him in history. In fact, he's called the ultimate Renaissance man, someone who excels in many fields and has many talents. I first learned about Da Vinci at the age of 5, and I was inspired by his story as I'd never been before. I learned about amazing artists like Van Gogh, pioneers like Amelia Earhart, and even scientific geniuses like Albert Einstein. But to me, Da Vinci was the crown jewel. He was kind of like an overpowered video game character, strong in all fields, not just one or two. I loved the idea of pursuing anything and everything, from sports to art to music to math, and excelling at all of them. But as I grew older, I slowly realized that not everyone shared my mindset. The world seemed to be set on forcing me to choose a profession, decide between extracurriculars, and specialize rather than branch out. Innocent questions of, what do you want to be when you grow up, answered with the naive pirate or astronaut, soon became replaced with serious demands. What career would I go into? What would I major in college? These questions, according to my parents at least, were life-changing and everlasting, so I'd better pick wisely. From my freshman year on, I was constantly pressured to give up anything that wasn't essential to my academic aspirations. Even as I applied to colleges, I was told by everyone from friends to counselors to questionably reliable online forums to focus on one passion, one spike, so to say, because, well, colleges didn't want someone who was well-rounded and unfocused. They wanted someone who knew what they wanted to do. The message was clear. Being a jack of all trades, master of none simply wouldn't do in a more and more specialized world. And so, I began to panic. How could I possibly limit myself to one field? I simply couldn't fathom boxing myself into a passion and later a career for the rest of my life that I wasn't even sure I would be interested in. I wanted to become an engineer, a veterinarian, and a sculptor. But who could do such a thing? I wasn't Da Vinci. I felt like I had to sacrifice some of my dreams in exchange for the others. I slowly became more and more disappointed, disillusioned by the reality that my childhood inspiration was unrealistic. In fact, I began to wonder, would Da Vinci even have existed in the modern world of specialization? Now, to answer this question, I want to go back to one of my favorite childhood passions, origami. I'm sure many of you have folded paper stars, cranes, or boxes. I learned to do the same as a kid in Chinese school, but I wasn't satisfied just folding basic shapes. I wanted more and more complex models and new folding techniques. I consumed the small origami section of my elementary school library at breakneck speed, flying through each model until I mastered even the most complex one. At the time, my motivation was simple. I folded things that I thought looked cool. I didn't look below the surface of the art. But, as many people do, I began to lose interest in my childhood passion as I entered middle school and then high school. Time folding worthless paper declined, time studying for tests increased. Origami was just a craft. How could it possibly be useful to any real career? But one day, everything changed. I remember I was in my 8th grade geometry class, paying zero attention to our lesson on reflective angles. Why would I care about geometry, something that I couldn't see any application to in real life? Instead, I was folding tiny paper cranes out of scraps from my geometry notes. And as the lesson went on and on, I began fiddling with the birds, adjusting some, unfolding some others. By chance, I glanced up at the whiteboard, and like a thunderbolt, it hit me. Miraculously, the same reflected triangle showed up in my unfolded crane and my geometry homework. This was just my first glimpse into the endless possibilities that I'd soon discover out of origami. Let's take a simple example. Here we have a piece of paper with a square hole in it and a circle. We want to get this circle through the hole in the piece of paper. Now, upon first glance, this seems impossible. The circle is clearly too big to fit through any gap in the paper. But using origami, we can actually manipulate this flat sheet of paper, like this, to change the size of the largest gap. And now we can see that the circle actually fits through easily. So the important concept here is the relationship between the 2D and 3D plane. Origami lives between these two states, and it's just part of what makes it such an interesting field. We were able to use origami to break the limitations of the second dimension. So, impressed by the potential of origami, I began using it to break the bounds of what I'd seen possible as well. Instead of using step-by-step instructions to fold formulaic figures, I unlocked my artistic freedom by learning how to solve crease patterns, which are essentially blueprints of unfolded models. Then, once I mastered that, I decided to get rid of the blueprint altogether. I decided to design my own models. Now, designing was a completely new challenge. I could no longer blindly follow instructions and just trust that my result would be exactly as I expected. I had to ideate, try new layouts, and fail over and over again until my model became just right. More than that, I learned that origami structures were mathematically based, and I began to fall in love with this combination of creativity and technicality. So, what exactly do I mean by that? Let's take this songbird, for example. Structurally, we have 2 wings, 2 legs, 1 head, and 1 tail. We can actually arrange this songbird on a piece of paper using a technique called circle packing. Essentially, each flap is represented by a circle, with its radius being the length of the flap. So here we have 2 wings, 2 legs, 1 head, and 1 tail. So, is that it? Once we collapse this, we should have a songbird. But not quite. So this is the collapsed base. But that's not a songbird. Where's the delicate tail feathers, wings, and claws? The truth is, all that computing we did earlier does absolutely no good without something else to breathe life into the model. Shaping. It's through shaping that we can get from a crude base to this. And this is definitely my favorite part of designing, having the ability to take a replicable base and chisel out tiny details, whether an outstretched claw or sculpted eye. This is where originality and personality come in, things that truly make your models unique. It's this combination of mathematical structure and artistic freedom that makes my models possible. Now, I'm not even close to the first person to discover this. Robert Lang, for example, created an algorithm that could predict layouts of models back in the 90s. Even further, origami could be the key to innovation in countless fields, including space, medicine, and energy. Now, I'm not going to bore you with science all night, but the possibilities of origami are truly endless. Collapsible bulletproof walls, transforming origami microrobots that can perform multiple functions without exiting someone's body, collapsible and deployable solar panels that can be launched effectively in space with just one motion. This is only a glimpse into what origami engineering can do. I've begun to realize through origami that maybe achieving all my dreams is possible. just not in the way I first thought. I might not be able to become a professional doctor, engineer, musician, and environmentalist all at the same time, but I can use aspects of each of them to bring new perspectives wherever I go. And just like origami can be applied to astrophysics, medicine, and architecture, anything that you're interested in can be applied to countless fields as well. I used to think that origami was a one-dimensional craft for kids, but I discovered a world of innovation and possibility. I want to encourage you to do the same. Take one of your passions, any of them. What connections can you make? If you're a guitarist, how does physics affect your sound? If you're a chef, how can you chemically create the best tasting flavor combinations? I think you'll find that things are far more interconnected than you realize. So, I want to go back to our friend Leo. What if society had boxed him into one field? Well, I think it's safe to say that he wouldn't be nearly as celebrated as he is today. We can all learn from Leonardo da Vinci, even though our world is vastly different than his. So maybe you'll become an engineer inspired by the arts, a physicist studying flying machines, or a painter who likes to program on the side. Maybe even all of them. So, what's your unique way to contribute to this world? Thank you.
We will now have a 15-minute intermission where you can enjoy snacks, talk to the speakers, write notes to them in the lobby. Please join us afterwards for our next block of 4 speakers.
us tonight, and thank you for taking the time to share your story. Now, I'd like to introduce our next speaker. Have you ever gotten an allowance or a check and then in 2 weeks wonder where it all went? Audience, please give a warm welcome to the stage, financial nerd and my friend, Atharv Joshi.
It's January 2021. Amidst the COVID lockdown, a so-called David versus Goliath showdown erupted. It was led by 34-year-old Massachusetts dad from the basement of his rented home. His strategies were discussed on the Reddit forum Wall Street Bets, and on the New York Stock Exchange, the GameStop stock soared up 2,000%. Does this bring back any memories? It turns out the man who drove the GameStop Reddit mania was named Keith Gill, and at its peak, his original investment of $53,000 had become $48 million. But what about everyone else? By the end of the year, the stock had plummeted, and many big names and everyday investors lost thousands of dollars. These types of mania grab the attention of the media. However, anybody rarely stops to say, wait a minute, why did so many people take such extreme risks and lose so much of their savings because of a Reddit post? Well, that is fundamentally because of a lack of understanding of personal finance. But don't worry, I won't make you sit through a personal finance class. What I do want to do is draw your attention to the financial illiteracy around us, even in a prosperous country like the US. While volunteering at food drives, I observed how many families with low income struggled to meet their basic needs due to staggering debt. Though my interactions with them were limited, it was evident that almost all the people coming through the drives weren't aware of the basics of personal finance, which made them vulnerable to falling prey to predatory debt. My journey with personal finance began in the 8th grade when I studied economics as part of my school's curriculum. The course introduced me to the basics of personal finance. Admittedly, luck was also an important factor. I'm fortunate to have been born in a family where the discipline to manage money, understanding investment options, and regular discussions on how to categorize earnings into spendings, savings, and donating have built personal finance into my conscience. However, not everyone is lucky enough to be born in a financially aware family. And this is why financial literacy needs to be formally taught along with the other subjects in schools. The statistics for financial literacy are underwhelming. A survey published by the Council for Economic Education in 2023 identified just 16 states requiring a standalone personal finance course in high school. California is one of the largest of the 22 states where the high school curriculum does not include personal finance. And the consequences are far-reaching. 32% of teens still don't know the difference between a credit and debit card. According to the Federal Reserve's 2022 survey, 32% of Americans lack enough money to cover a $400 emergency expense. This is the first way that financial literacy is broken. We must change young teenagers' mindsets before they go out into the real world to ensure that they become financially stable, build assets, and achieve their personal goals. But you may argue, can't people just Google for information? Well, yes, there are a lot of websites and blogs with detailed content on personal finance. So the problem isn't a lack of content. Rather, it is the lack of people who take the time to learn about it. Google can provide you the answers, but learning the basics of financial literacy concepts such as budgeting, compounding, and interest rates gives you the ability to assess your personal situation and scenarios. Personal finance isn't interesting enough that middle schoolers or high schoolers will proactively self-study it. Even adults shy away from learning this life skill. And even after learning, the benefits of savings and investing take a very long time to accrue. In this world of instant gratification, money compounding over 7 to 10 years and doubling is an eternity. Why not spend that money on the venti caramel ribbon crunch cappuccino at Starbucks? There's neither an incentive nor a benefit to learning personal finance. And this is the second way that financial literacy is broken. So the question is, can financial literacy efforts be improved? How do we fix it so that people are more responsible with their money and hopefully not gamble it all away on the next GameStop? When someone thinks of financial literacy, they start to think of what is the next stock or ETF to invest in, or the difference between an IRA and a Roth IRA. What is missing is the basics of personal finance taught in a simple to understand language in a fun way. I started to create financial videos with an emphasis on simplicity. And once I gained my footing on creating simple animated videos, I decided to take that to the next stage. Where do we high schoolers spend our free time? We practically live in the digital world. This is why I created a mobile app called FinLit EDU. It's a free and secure mobile app that provides bite-sized lessons through animated videos. And at the end of each lesson, a built-in quiz ensures that you have fully understood the topic. However, my app wasn't gaining traction fast enough. How could I motivate people to take their financial education seriously? I started by delivering content through a personal finance workshop, and that motivated some students to learn in a more traditional setting. However, the level of engagement wasn't high enough. Maybe their parents forced them to attend. For subsequent workshops, I told attendees that they would receive an Amazon gift card if they completed a quiz correctly and a prize for winning a stock game. And the level of engagement went through the roof. Not only that, once they went through the lessons, they left some flattering reviews. Lesson learned. Incentives drive meaningful engagement, both for kids and adults. And as of today, my app has more than 200 downloads. And we can expand on this idea. With greater financial support, we can introduce more incentives to engage with students and communities. As an example, local stores can provide coupons as incentives to learn, potentially under their corporate social responsibility programs. Apart from sponsoring local events, stores can provide incentives to spread financial literacy. Imagine, in addition to distributing groceries to low-income families, you also give them a coupon for completing a personal finance module. You are going to see compounding benefits for the entire family. Further, local credit unions can engage the newly financially literate low-income families with financial products they previously did not have access to. Now, there's both an incentive and a benefit to learning personal finance. Mobile apps such as My FinLit EDU could be at the center of this ecosystem. Nobody in the world has yet implemented such a program, and this type of program can re-energize financial literacy efforts. But it's going to take a village to succeed, and I encourage you all to play your part. The Attorney General of California has started the California Require Personal Finance Course for High School Graduation Initiative, which plans to add a one-semester personal finance course to the high school graduation requirements. They still must collect the signatures of hundreds of thousands of voters for the initiative to be eligible for the ballot. Look out for this initiative to be on the ballot in November and vote for it. Second, I've experimented with and proved how incentives play a large role in motivation. We need to reach out to organizations working in financial literacy to adopt this new and effective approach of spreading financial literacy. It's time for a collective effort involving organizations, governments, and individuals to transform financial literacy from a neglected concern into a societal priority. Take your financial education seriously by using educational apps or seeking guidance from trusted financial advisors. By redefining the approach to financial education, we can make an impact on the global scale. Thank you.
Thank you, Athar, for empowering us with financial literacy and helping us improve our lives with personal finance skills. Now, I know it's getting a little late into the night, but I am honored to introduce our next speaker, who will be sharing her story about the challenges of bedtime with sleep, rest, and the commotion of life. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Junior El Najarian.
Sleep, the universal activity everyone experiences each night. Just to be clear, I'm not here to sell you a mattress, but I really want to know how many of you get a good night's sleep majority of the time? Do you wake up feeling refreshed? What about well-rested and ready to start the day? These are concerns that have been constantly lingering in the back of my mind, as sleep has been a prevalent issue my entire life. Though I have dealt with sleep problems, it benefited my mom when she got upgraded to a private room after giving birth. I couldn't sleep through the night, and it was so bad I had to be brought to a separate room. Thanks to my sleep apnea, even the nurses couldn't figure out how to soothe me to sleep. My body woke me up every 10 seconds, just so I could gasp for air. Safe to say, I know what it's like to get a bad night's rest. At just 2 years old, I had an invasive surgery where doctors removed my adenoids and tonsils after a sleep study concluded it was necessary to combat my sleep apnea. You must be thinking, the problem is now magically fixed, right? Well, not exactly, as while doctors addressed my physiological sleep problem, the psychological issue at hand still persists. Over the last decade, I have been in and out of doctor's visits and have experimented with a wide variety of sleeping aids. Meditation, melatonin, exercise, white noise, dark shades, and prescription remedies like trazodone. It's a bit like hocus pocus. You get the right mix of ingredients, and voila, I sleep through the night. I replicate this consistency for multiple nights in a row, and then, boom, something changes. Daylight savings, a late night of studying, the weekend, summer, or a special night out. We all know we live busy lives. I'm sure my fellow juniors can attest to this, especially when we are told to go to sleep instead of staying up late studying. But trust me, you will not regret going to bed instead of finishing that last assignment. And this is coming from a perfectionist. Your ability to function is monumentally more important than a grade you get on an exam that will never matter in a couple of years. Your sleep, on the other hand, will matter in the long run. Somehow, though, we tell ourselves it's more important to finish that project or to finish that really important 10-part TikTok series. We tell ourselves it's okay because we can just make it up on the weekends. But newsflash, our bodies don't act like bank accounts. Sleep debt is real and it's almost impossible to fix. Yet with the insomnia I have, it's hard to even fall asleep. I kept asking myself, why won't my brain just turn off? All I've ever wanted since I was born is to sleep soundly. I felt like my mind was uncontrollably spinning in circles. My fear of feeling too tired caused me to lack productivity in my life. When I didn't get a good night's rest, thinking about sleep controlled my every day. While sleep is vital to every aspect of our lives, the ability for us to simply feel rested will exponentially improve our life. Everyone is always talking about wanting to be the best version of themselves and wanting to develop clarity of where they want to go in life. Yet, it is proven the only way we can accomplish this is by getting sufficient rest. We need to think about the bigger picture when trying to prioritize sleep. Just focusing on the actual time in bed will not get you the results that you need. Those who don't struggle with falling asleep or stay asleep through the night might think they are exempt from rest issues. However, it may be surprising to know that issues regarding rest are prevalent no matter the amount of sleep you may get. 8 hours of sleep doesn't mean anything if you're not feeling rested. Physical rest is just one piece of the puzzle. In fact, there are actually 7 different types of rest: sensory, physical, mental, social, emotional, creative, spiritual. And we need all of them. Rapid eye movement, or REM sleep, is the deepest form of sleep, playing a vital role in memory and cognitive development. A deficiency in this would result in the inability for us to relax our mind and muscles. This stage of sleep adheres to the psychological impact of sleep, which ultimately is the key to unlocking our ability to feel rested. This was the hardest pill for me to swallow when consulting with my sleep doctor, but she told me it is essential for me to have a consistent wake-up time throughout all days of the week. including on the days where I crave sleeping in the most. Having a sense of routine will guarantee that your body is on track to know what time you should start feeling tired and what time you should be ready to wake up. While it doesn't hurt to have a cold, dark room for sufficient rest, the way I have been most successful is by tricking my mind into thinking that it's time to fall asleep. So, even if the environment changes or circumstances change, your personal ritual can stay the same. Consistency is key. For me, it's taking a warm shower and shutting down my computer. This is sensory rest. Turning off lights and devices naturally relaxes us. So I can trick my brain into thinking that it's time to go to sleep, even if it's an hour earlier, whether it's homecoming, finals, or I'm in a different location. My body has learned that certain actions tell my brain when it's time to go to sleep. I no longer depend on sleep medication, but instead allow my body to produce its own melatonin. Physical changes can be made, but no one should expect these small changes to help them in a day. That was my rude awakening. In all the years I've struggled with insomnia, half of the battle has been the result of me thinking it will never get better, no matter how hard I try to correct it. It is mandatory for you to have the mindset that you can improve your rest. Everyone needs to remember that practice doesn't make perfect, but it does make progress. Committing to following these patterns even half of the days of the week will ensure that you are making progress. So no, I don't get upset when I naturally wake up at 7 a.m. on the weekends because it means my sleep cycle is on track. I wish I could just take a magic wand and wave it whenever I'm having trouble sleeping or feeling rested throughout the day. But what I've learned is that there is no cure. No amount of medication will put me to sleep. It has to be something that I am actively making an effort to fix. And my biggest enemy in this process is me. I've spent the past nights overthinking for this moment on stage, but thanks to my journey, the second that thought pops into my head, I let it completely disintegrate and blow it away. This is mental rest, allowing my brain to take a break from reality. I just take a step back. I just breathe. I want everyone to practice this with me right now. Close your eyes, but don't fall asleep on me. Okay, everyone with me? Inhale for 4 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. And exhale for 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Open your eyes. Congratulations. We all just reset our nervous system and practice spiritual rest by focusing on breathing. Let's do this together. Let's focus on rest and simultaneously fix the problems we all face. By easing our mind into thinking that it's fully relaxed, we will be guaranteed a night of quality rest. Thank you and good night.
Thank you, Elle, for educating us on the importance of rest for both our body and our mind. Last, but certainly not least, Vishnu Portharaju and his talk on how stepping out of your comfort zone impacts your perspective toward the world.
When I was 9 years old, my father wanted to teach me how to play badminton. He took me to our backyard and we spent hours playing together. After I missed hitting that birdie every single time, my father was left incredibly frustrated and about ready to give up on me. But before we quit, I decided to change just one thing about how I was playing. I put the racket in my left hand this time instead of my right. Suddenly, I saw myself in the badminton Olympics. I kept missing with my right hand, but it was like I couldn't miss with my left. This was the first time that I understood that my right hand, which I had been using for everything up until this moment, might not be the side I was actually strongest with. In fact, This exchange is when I learned I was left-hand dominant and not right-handed. I had been taught by everyone around me to use my right hand, and at the same time, I had never learned how to use my left hand for anything. I couldn't write with it, and any sport I'd ever done, I had done with my right hand, which explains why I struggled in all of them, and why I was always picked last in dodgeball. Realizing that I was actually left-hand dominant left me with a pretty big choice at a pretty young age. I could choose to power through and force myself to restructure my brain by utilizing my right hand, or I could begin the process of relearning things with my dominant hand. This wasn't the easier process, but it was miles better for me than sticking to my right hand. Taking the time to relearn things with a new hand forced me outside of what was comfortable to me at the time. Although it was difficult, it had more benefits than anything else. Like 9-year-old me, we all face a similar decision every day in life. So often, we are called to pick between doing what is easy and comfortable versus trying something new and risky. Retreating to what we think is safe is called staying in our comfort zones. And scientists consider this to be the psychological zone where we are in an anxiety-neutral position. We have strong performance in our comfort zones, but we very rarely take risks or leave them, because comfort implies safety and familiarity. It's like getting out of bed every morning. We all hate to drag ourselves out from underneath our blankets because it's so warm and cozy. But at the same time, we must do so in order to start our day. It is human nature to want to stay in our comfort zones, to stick to what we know and what we can do best. But unfortunately, that doesn't always mean that staying in our comfort zones is what's best for us. Look at artists like Taylor Swift. She has tried out so many different genres in her music, from country to pop to indie folk. Her journey to find her sound wasn't always easy or straightforward, but in my personal opinion, experimenting with new ideas has paid off. Artists that are able to take risks and try new things can hone in on their skills and create their own style. In cases like Taylor's, stepping out of her comfort zone has helped her grow immensely. Taking the time to relearn things with my own left hand pushed me outside of my own comfort zone. It's a process I'm still in the middle of today. For example, every time I go bowling, I bowl half the time with my left hand and half the time with my right. And if you're wondering, I do in fact strike out equally on both sides. But at least I know that now. Trying new things is fundamental to who we are, and it is the only way we can grow as people. By exploring a variety of things, by using both our left and our right hands, we can understand what works best for us, adapting our current skill set to things we have yet to try. It would be hypocritical of me to stand up here and talk to you all about jumping out of your comfort zones, because I am definitely a person who sticks to theirs. I'm comfortable with my right hand, especially when it comes to things like writing. I'm not always a huge fan of trying new foods or places, because why would I want to try something I know I might not enjoy? Although, when I'm faced with a situation where I could pick between doing what I already know or trying something new, I think about my left hand. My left hand is new and unique to me. It's challenging for me to use, but I have come to love that. I thought that the experience of stepping outside of my comfort zone would be daunting and unappealing, but it's thrilling. Taking the time to relearn things with a new hand forced me to realize how many perspectives I'd yet to experience, ones that may change me entirely. Although it might be difficult to adapt to new ideas, I have learned it's not impossible. Today, I embrace my left and my right hand equally. They both have their purposes in my life, and I have found what I can do best with both of them. I hesitate to say I'm ambidextrous. Ambidextrous people know how to use both hands well. I'm still using them both poorly. But it's safe to say I found my niche. I drive mostly with my left hand, and I play a left-handed guitar. I write mostly with my right hand, and anything cooking related, like using a knife or grating cheese, too. Then, there's all the things I can do with both hands. I can make a three-pointer in basketball, play mini golf and tennis, and the list goes on and on. I can even pick up a mug with both hands. Impressive, right? The best part is now when I try something new, I'm able to test it out on both sides and see which one works best. I see if this new skill complements the natural dominance of my left side or if it plays to a skill I've already learned on my right side. I am a better and more functioning human today because I use both my hands, and they each have their purposes in my life. I want everyone to walk out of here today and embrace their non-dominant hand. And no, I don't just mean going home and trying to write with your other hand. What I do mean is that you should go out into the world and experience something you've never done before, even if it's something you hate. For example, I personally have signed up to do a half marathon. Am I a runner? Not in a million years. But I never gave running a chance. And when I did, I realized it was actually pretty fun. In the same way, you all should go out into the world and try something you never imagined yourself doing. Maybe you'll take up running like me. Or maybe you'll find out that you're secretly a really good painter, writer, chef, or a million other things. There are so many activities and skills out there for you to try, and you have no idea what your secret talent might be. New perspectives, new experiences, and new ideas are what make up who we are. We are an amalgamation of all of the thoughts, viewpoints, and experiences in our lives, and having more of those things allows us to understand who we are better. If I hadn't swapped hands when I was playing badminton, I think about all the things I would still struggle with. I would have continued to perform poorly with my right hand. And although it was uncomfortable to have to relearn simple things with a new hand, doing uncomfortable things is how we grow. And who knows, maybe you'll find out that you're secretly ambidextrous too. The only way to find out is to try. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishnu, for opening our eyes to that opposing perspective and pushing us past our comfort zones. And thank you to all of you who came out to show your support today for our 8 student speakers. We wouldn't be able to put on such a successful event without your support, so thank you. Whether it's going home tonight to get a good night's rest or writing a sweet note to one of our speakers with your non-dominant hand, we hope you took away something insightful from today and you took away something you didn't walk in with today.
This marks the end of our program, but we'd like to thank everyone who made the event today possible. Please welcome our board back to the stage.
No, two, because you're the speakers.
And now please welcome our speakers back to the stage.
You walk first. And put the bar.
And we are your co-directors. We would also like to thank Mr. Thompson, our photographers, and our tech team for their constant support. And last but most certainly not least, our incredible moderator, Mrs. Leslie Shortle. We'd like to invite her.
Shortle, 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 Shortle.
We hope you leave here today with a heightened understanding of a new topic, a new perspective, or simply an inspiration.
And we hope that you can take all the lessons you learned today from our speakers and apply them somehow to your own life.
Thank you for joining us tonight, and we hope you come back next year for more ideas worth spreading.